Hey, I'm Ryan, this is my brother Daniel, and this is Rolls in the Family. And today we are reviewing Push, a simple card game about pushing your luck to try to collect the most point cards.
And if you enjoy easygoing card games that you can play with just about anyone and the excitement of pushing your luck, Push may be a great addition to your collection. And as always, we've got links to Push, one link to Push, down below if you want to check it out for yourself. But Ryan, let's jump into the review.
Push is a game of pushing your luck to try to collect the most colored point cards. On your turn, you reveal cards from the deck one at a time, adding them to one of 3 stacks. But no card of the same color or number can be placed in the same stack. You can stop at any time and select one pile to keep for yourself, but the remaining piles are then drafted by players going clockwise. However, if you choose to continue and draw a card that can't be placed legally in any of the 3 stacks, then you bust, losing all cards of a randomly rolled color and still allowing the stacks to be drafted by your opponents.
On future turns, you also have the option to bank a color instead of pushing, sacrificing the opportunity for new cards for the safety of protecting point cards from being lost. Play continues until the deck is depleted and point cards are then totaled to determine the winner.
There are 2 different layers of push your luck in Push. The first is when you are drawing cards from the deck, trying to make one really good pile while being careful to avoid busting. However, it isn't just the risk of busting that makes you hesitant, but also the fact that adding additional point cards to more than one stack is only going to benefit your opponents, as they get to draft the stacks that you don't pick. If you have one stack that is looking pretty good, do you risk giving your opponents good cards just to try to get a few extra points? The second layer of push your luck comes on future turns, where you must decide if you want to push for more cards or just take a turn off to save all cards of a color. How many points are you willing to accumulate in a color and still leave them at risk of getting wiped out?
This risk is amplified by the special die card. It follows the same rules of only allowing 1 per stack while pushing, but it is actually a negative effect as it requires you to roll the die and lose all cards of that color, the same consequence of busting on your own turn. This means that not only can you lose cards by busting on your own turn, but you could also be forced to roll when drafting stacks on another player's turn. Conversely, you can try to build up stacks on your turn that give your opponents no choice but to roll the die. Most of these decisions fall into the category of go with your gut, where players rarely fully process the odds, but rather make choices on the spot based on how they feel. Players won't likely win if they don't take risks to go after more point cards. But they also probably won't win if they always take big risks. It is a light exercise in balancing risk and conservative play to put yourself in a position to win.
A lot of the fun of Push is the playful banter around the table, which is something that is more common with 3 or more players. Higher player counts mean that not every player can draft a stack each turn, but the inclusion of reverse cards helps remedy this, as they reverse the drafting order when drawn, so any player has the potential of getting a stack on almost every turn. With just colored cards and a name that is literally a call-out of the primary mechanism, there is no theme to be found here.
Ultimately, the outcome of Push is overwhelmingly determined by luck. There are still fun decisions, but don't expect your strategy to reliably lead to victory. The game is fairly interactive in the group dynamic it creates, and the way you build your 3 stacks directly affects other players. But most decisions to push your luck aren't heavily influenced by other players. The setup is about as trivial as possible. Just shuffle the deck and start playing.
While the rules for building up the 3 stacks on your turn are a little more to understand than other super light card games, it is still very easy to teach and for players to pick up as you go. The shuffling of the deck ensures every turn is unique, but the feel from game to game remains very similar in spite of this randomization.
Almost all of the interest in the game hinges on the core process for pushing your luck on each turn, and fortunately, the system works really well. Not only are you pushing to try to gain the most points yourself, but you also have the tension of wanting to avoid giving your opponents good cards. But maybe you don't mind making 2 good stacks just to give you options, especially if you don't think the first opponent to draft is winning. The die roll cards add a great twist here, as they give you a way to make stacks worse and also introduce the risk of needing to put a die card on the stack you intend to take. The system also supports unlikely situations, like a player drawing a near perfect stack of different numbers and colors, or having a really unlucky turn, busting with just 4 cards drawn. These edges of the luck spectrum help facilitate a fun energy around the table.
Because decisions are largely made from the gut instead of a deep assessment of the probabilities, the game tends to move really quickly. Every few seconds, a new card is drawn, players will have the opportunity to gain cards, or someone needs to roll the die with all opponents cheering for a big stack of points to be lost. Unlike more strategic games, there is very little time waiting on other players to think about the current game state.
In addition to the quick play, players are also invested outside of their own turn because there's the chance they will get to draft a leftover stack of cards. Just as the active player is excitedly wishing for the perfect cards to be drawn, all of the opponents are hoping for them to be forced into leaving some attractive options or having the draft order reversed to benefit them. All of this keeps everyone way more engaged than if a player's turn only affected themselves.
There are only 2 special cards in the game, the die roll and the reverse, but it is just enough to add a little spice and interest to the core formula. The die card is crucial for introducing negative value to stacks and fills the important role of introducing risk on other players' turns, making the option to bank cards to keep them safe an important consideration. The reverse card makes sure that players on either side of the active player are invested, and can also be funny as it switches back and forth, and you may or may not want to draft depending on whether the remaining stacks will have positive or negative value.
Push is the kind of game that has an initial novelty factor and then quickly settles into comfort food experience where you have seen most of what the game has to offer. That core experience can continue to create the group dynamic as advertised, but don't expect to be surprised by many new situations or strategies after you have played it a few times. And the game really is boiled down to that push your luck mechanism, so there isn't much here if you don't find that compelling.
The real risk of losing all cards of a color means that banking cards is usually important for a winning strategy. That said, the fact is that spending a turn to bank is just less fun than playing the little push your luck minigame. The game usually moves quickly enough that it'll be your turn again soon, but it is a downside common with push your luck games that sometimes choosing less fun is the right strategic decision. And now let's get to our personal ratings for Push.
So Ryan, I feel like these small little games are something that we've realized are really essential in our collection. There's a lot of opportunities to play these kind of quick little card games. A lot of people are familiar with just taking a deck of cards and whatnot. So I feel like a game like Push is super accessible and has opportunities for it to get played a lot. My personal rating that I'm going to be coming in with here is a 7 out of 10 for Push. I think that Push has a lot of things going for it, and things that, in terms of what it's trying to do, that it delivers on really well, of creating that kind of push your luck experience for people. I think that's a mechanic we both have enjoyed a lot with our groups. There's just an inherent excitement around push your luck, and I think this does that. I think maybe the high of the push your luck there's a whole scale of how exciting of a potential can deliver. I mean, I suppose the highest excitement of this is if you like draw one of every, you're able to get a stack.
Really great stack.
And I think that's exciting, but maybe there's
honestly, the lowers are more extreme, because if you roll and lose like an entire stack.
Right. And that's maybe why I'm not coming in quite as high, is that some of that, I feel like where I see push your luck extremes happen are on the negative side, and which is maybe funny for other people, but as like the player in the moment, it's kind of like, oh, that's sad. But I think it's a really simple game. I mean, the whole I just love the whole kind of, you got 3 stacks, that tension of, do I keep going or do I try to, pin this stack onto the next person so they have to roll? I think that's just a really interesting thing. And so that whole part of it I like. As we mentioned kind of earlier in the review, I understand banking from a mechanics standpoint, but just from a like fun standpoint, this isn't that long of a game. I want on every
Daniel
turn.
just wants to push every time.
Which, I mean, hypothetically, I suppose I just could.
Yeah, you could
I
win.
could just not bank. And yeah, I don't win this game very much. Weird correlation.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So I actually don't own this one personally. Kind of considered it just because, it does fit its kind of time space really well, and the times they've played it with people, I think it's gone over really well. Teaches quick, plays quick. Even if you have a rough game, the game takes, I don't know, like 10 minutes to play.
10,
Is it
minutes.
like 10, 15 minutes? So you can oftentimes play a couple back to back. But yeah, that's kind of why maybe I'm not coming in quite as high, but still a solid one. And I think even with a 7, like games that are this cheap, this accessible, are definitely worth checking out. So I'm coming in at a 7, but Ryan, you're the one who owns it here.
I'm the one that owns it.
You're the one who owns it. What are you going to give this one?
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's nice to own games that are quick, easy to teach. You can play with anybody, and I want to have games like that in my collection. They aren't the games that are going to tend to rate super high for me.
It's not your number one.
Not my number one game, but I am also giving it a 7 out of 10. And I think I kind of agree with a lot of what you're saying. It's a game that I've played it now. I've played it more than you have. And we talked about it a little bit in the review. Once you've played it a lot, it's not bringing a lot new. You're kind of experiencing the same kind of exciting moments, but it's all kind of the same flavor. But in a game that's so quick, and that like is creating the social dynamic, so the experience of the game is very much shaped by who you're playing it with. Yeah, it just really serves that role very well. And I've seen multiple examples of playing it, like pulling it out and just having it perfectly kind of fit that situation. I remember I think you were there. We had an example that we were on our vacation, played with our cousins. And it was just like an example of, and we played a couple games in a row. So the first game, everybody kind of picked up on it. And I just came away from it being like, man, Push was the right game to play in that situation. So love having those types of games in my collection. I think it's a really clever designer. I think it works really well because of how it kind of couples the reward for yourself and the fact that you might be giving other people stuff while you're pushing. Because a lot of push your luck games, it's, if I keep going, the two options are either I'm going to get more for myself or I'm going to bust and lose it. But here it's like, I'm either going to get more for myself, bust and lose it, or I might just like give more to my opponents. I guess you could also be hurting your opponents if you happen to draw a die card and you can, which is fun when you can kind of like strategically like, haha, I'm sticking you with this one, this roll. But I think that system with the odds of, kind of figuring out what do I feel like my odds are that I'm going to bust? Because it's hard to like know exactly when it's like, okay, I've got like a 6 would bust or a yellow would bust. Like you can kind of start to see, or sometimes it's like not completely obvious because it's like, oh, actually a yellow 6 would get me because this pile can't have yellow and this pile can't have a 6. Yeah. And so it's I think that piece works well, but then the decision of, and that's where I think some of the strategy comes in. Like I'll have times where I reveal a couple cards, they go into one stack and I go, I'm just taking it. I'm not letting you guys draft anything because I'm not even going to make a second or third pile. And I think honestly, the mistake that new players make in this game, at least strategically,
they keep
is
going.
They give too much to their opponents because they want to keep pushing, and they end up giving these nice juicy stats.
That is some high level analysis.
You're here for the high level push strategy
guide. You didn't know you were going to get that in this video. That's just bonus content right here.
Bonus content. That's what we're here for. So it's one of those games that at the price point it's at, and the player range going up to 6 players, and the time and the ease to teach, it just is one that I'm happy to have, and I'm still happy to play. I've played it quite a bit, and I'm not sick of it, because that's the challenge with these types of games, right? Is finding ones that do I still want to play it after 20 plays? And the answer for Push right now is yeah. Like, I do still enjoy playing Push.
Well, and that's key because, you were saying that there's, after you've played it, several times, there's not a lot of new that it's going to offer. But I think that's just where, especially when it's this cheap, but you just have to come in with the right expectation about this game. This isn't the game that you're going to, like, your core gaming group play tons of times and it's going to deliver just this incredible long lasting thing. But if you have it as that game for introducing to new people, really it's a lot of times just new people, maybe they haven't played a lot of games, you need something just quick, and this one, just if it's that in your collection, it hits it perfectly, and it's one you won't grow tired of.
Yeah, or even just like, you maybe have family members that aren't like big gamers.
Right.
And like for them, they would much rather find a game that they get really comfortable with and just provides a consistent fun experience.
Just a
and this is that type of game. So we've had a lot of fun with Push. Ultimately, we do want to help you decide, is Push a game that you should consider checking out?
If you don't enjoy pushing your luck or want a little more strategy, even in your accessible card games, then Push may not hit the mark.
But if you want a simple card game that you can play with anyone, you want a light experience that encourages playful banter, and you want something that teaches quickly and plays well from 3 to 6 players, then Push is definitely worth a look.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy short, accessible card games and you want to hear about some other options, we actually just released a video of games like Uno. Uno is a very popular, short, accessible card game. Well, we picked 5 games that are like Uno and really awesome, accessible card games and worth checking out. So you can click on that video there, and we will see you in the next one.